All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our third edition of the Citrix Session podcast. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got with me Bill Sutton, who I always have with me. How's it going, Bill?
Going well, Andy. How about yourself?
I'm doing lovely for a Monday, Monday.
Yep,
Bill
same
is
here.
Bill is the director of services, longtime Citrix guy, longtime Citrix consultant and sales engineer, based out of Richmond, Virginia.
Yep, but I'm coming to you today from Charlotte.
Oh, you're in the XenTegra office. Awesome.
I
So
am.
hopefully at some time today I'll make it there. And guys, we have with us Nitin Sharma. Nitin is with Citrix, and he wrote a blog recently from the Citrix blog site. That's where you can find it. It's called "What's New with Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops September 2019." And if you're a Citrix guy, this is exciting stuff to you. We are always sitting on the edge of our table, or edge of our chair, sometimes on the table, waiting to find out more about our key product, which we all have grown up knowing and loving for the most part, which is the virtual app and desktop space. If you go back far enough, we would call that WinFrame, MetaFrame, presentation server, XenApp, XenDesktop, and now we call it Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop. So Nitin, how's it going?
Hey, Andy, how's it going?
It's good. You want to give a little bit more background on yourself for the group?
Yeah. So, excuse me. My name is Nitin Sharma. I'm senior product marketing manager over at Citrix. So I'm part of the team that covers the app and desktop virtualization. Most folks will probably know it as XenApp and XenDesktop. But folks that may be familiar, we did a rebranding of it, and we now throughout my answers, I'll be mentioning it as Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop. Been with Citrix for about 7 years, various roles in sales and marketing. Been within the actual product marketing space of the app and desktop portfolio for about a couple years.
No, that's great. That's great. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's cover our objective here, and let's get into the blog that you wrote, and let's go through it section by section and find out what it is Citrix is talking about. We ready?
Yep.
All right. So the first section, which I kind of joked about before the call here, before we started recording, is around long-term service release, which I know for a lot of people that might be kind of boring. But for me as a consultant, for Bill as a consultant, and for our customers, we have been waiting anxiously for another long-term service release. So let me try to discuss what a Citrix Virtual App and Desktop LTSR is real quick. So that's long-term service releases. Those are the ones that Citrix is committed to supporting, I think, for 5 years. And those are the ones that don't get features. They just get fixes every time Citrix has a new release. So, well, let me just take that differently. So those are the ones that don't get features all the time. A customer stays on that long-term service release, and they get cumulative updates, which allows them to get the fixes, but not net new features every time Citrix comes out with a new release. But if a customer wants to stay up to date with the latest features, they have to go with the most recent build, which would not be a long-term service release. So in this case, we're getting to a point where you guys are announcing something here that later in the year, we're going to get a long-term service release. It's going to have the fixes, and it's going to have the latest features. So Nitin, if I didn't take too much of your thunder, why don't you jump into what you're covering here?
You definitely made my job a little bit easier there. So yeah, like as you're mentioning, long-term service release, it's not necessarily, customers are really interested in it because it's more of a consistent build. A lot of industries that are specific that need to have a certified release, like healthcare, for example, they're really interested in our LTSR, or long-term service release. And yeah, we do release these every about 3 years, and we offer support for about 5 years after the release. So this is actually going to be packed with a lot of the features that we've released since our last long-term service release, which was 7.15. So this one is going to be we're targeting right now to release this in Q4, the end of the quarter. It's going to be our 1912 release, or 1912 LTSR. So this is going to feature a lot of the things like optimization for Microsoft Teams in a virtual environment. Some of the other features that we released in 1909, which is the release we'll be talking about today, and also 1906. Key thing here, if you guys are, for customers out there that are listening, or you guys are working with customers, they can actually start running in their pre-production environments the 1909 release, because it's going to be very similar code base, so they can actually get an idea of what it is and how it's going to function within their environment. And it'd be great if they, take the opportunity to kind of provide feedback on how it's working within their environment. So yeah, it's a big a lot of customers like this long-term service release, just because mere fact that they can just have it in their environment, and it's a sort of a consistent build.
I had practiced before this and reminded myself multiple times to make sure I said the following. And that is the second paragraph in your blog says, let's take a look at the high-level updates for the new Citrix Virtual App and Desktop 1909 release, which will be the on-prem release, and also the Virtual App and Desktop Service, which is the as-a-service cloud offering Citrix has, which is always on the latest release. And so I want to make sure everybody knows that everything we talk about from this point on will either be on-prem or service or both. And the long-term service release obviously is the on-prem conversation, right?
Correct. And I always try to make sure I'm clarifying or be really clear as far as like what feature, when we're talking about a feature, if it's specific to cloud or if it's specific to on-prem or both.
So Bill, a new LTSR, does that make your life as a delivery services director harder or easier?
It actually makes it easier, I think. On the one hand, that means we are likely going to enter into the upgrade process to get folks that are on 7.15 LTSR to the new one, which sounds like it's going to be 19.12. And that kind of brings me to another thought, and that is might want to mention that the change in the versioning. A lot of customers are used to 7.15, and they're going to see this 19.12 thing. You might want to just touch on that a little bit so that customers are clear on what the 19 stuff means relative to the old versioning.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, we did the versioning change last year. So yeah, it wasn't top of mind to kind of mention that. But so we changed our versioning to be more in line with very similar to how Microsoft does their versioning. So it is a change over from the usual 7.x type of versioning. Because we now do it a year-month or a month-year. And the goal of this is to sort of give customers a good idea as far as like where they are within the release and how far they are from current releases. It also helps, Citrix admins to be aware of when a specific release came out. So, for example, when you're saying 1906, I know it's a release that came out in June 2019 versus you told me that you're on XenDesktop 7.5. I have a rough idea when that was released,
right.
But you may not know where we are in the release, the release segments. So with the new versioning, where it's a little bit, I know it's for some customers out there, it's a minor pain point initially, but the goal of it is to try to make it a little bit easier and consumable when you're looking at how we release the on-prem cycles, and especially our cloud releases too.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a great way of approaching it to allow customers to get a better idea of where they are on the continuum of releases. So the takeaway here is if you're on 7.15 LTSR and you want to go to the latest LTSR, assuming it's released in December, you'll go to 19.12. From 7.15 LTSR to 19.12 LTSR, right, Nitin?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and Bill, we'd probably be remiss if we didn't point out that most customers are on 7.15. They're either on cumulative update 1, 2, or 3. Or is there a fourth? I can't remember.
3.
There's a 4, I believe.
Oh, there's a 4. Yeah.
So I hope you guys are enjoying this podcast. There's just that little piece of that, right, is a very valuable bit of information. So 19.12 will be the next long-term service release. And I can't believe we talked about this part this long, but I will ask this question. Nitin, is there any specific feature that between 7.15 cumulative update 4 and this release coming out that you think customers should be most excited about getting into a long-term service release supportable model?
Well, I hinted at it a little bit earlier. Actually, we've had a lot of customers that are specifically interested in our Teams optimization or Microsoft Teams optimization within virtual environments. So, folks would be familiar with it when we released optimization, the HDX real-time optimization pack for Skype for Business. So that was really well adopted. I think we have over 800,000, active users or daily users that are running Skype on within XenTegra and desktop or virtual app and virtual desktop. But speaking with customers, that's been one of the things that they're chomping at the bit for, just so that Teams optimization. So that's one of the big things that is in that 1912 LTSR. But also there's a lot of CPU optimization and bandwidth optimization that we've done with our releases. So that's going to be a lot of performance improvements overall that are going to be built in that upcoming LTSR release. So like it's just the we released the ability to create a large display can be split up into up to 8 logical monitors. That was something that we released in an on-prem release sometime last year. So there's a number of HDX features that are going to be in this 1912 release that customers are really excited about.
Yeah, that's great. And I will take this moment to highlight that even though Citrix marketing is talking about workspace and workspace service, and Citrix sales talks about Citrix workspace and workspace service all the time, you guys are doing a lot to continue to advance the traditional core product that all of us grew up on, which is virtual app and desktop. And I'd love to see it. I love the fact we're talking about it right now, because I don't think that gets enough attention on the things that you guys are doing to make that core product better while developing things like the workspace.
Correct.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, Andy. I had written in my notes after reading through this that I really love to see the continuous innovation on the on-prem as well as the cloud product. I think that's a key indicator of Citrix's continued support for both delivery models.
Yeah, I met with an executive at Citrix the other day, and my comment to them was that Synergy, they spent a lot of great time talking about workspace, but they missed an opportunity to continue to tell the fan base, the Citrix user community, how much you were still doing for the traditional product. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's move to the next topic here. I'm very interested in this one, which I think is going to take us back to the workspace, which is the performance and analytics tech preview. Nitin, you want to kind of give us an overview of what that thing is and what it means?
Yeah, so we announced this at Citrix Synergy this year. It's performance analytics. Very similar if the folks are familiar with security analytics. So let me just start with security analytics because people will be familiar with that. So with security analytics, admins are able to actually see like user scores based off their behaviors. So it basically, in the context of security abnormalities, like if I'm specifically logging in from the same device, from the same location, and all of a sudden it shows me logging in through my Citrix session in East, Europe somewhere on some jailbroken device, and the admin actually will see that risk score spike up, and they can take an actionable item to that. So that's just me describing how we did it from a security analytics side, because that's what we have out today. So we're doing that now to improve the actual end user experience, where admins can actually see and drill down how the Citrix experience is for their end users, and they can get scoring based off of how their Citrix sessions are going. So, like if I'm logging in and it's showing that I'm having a poor slowdown or an issue, an admin on the other side can see exactly what it is that is causing that, whether it's something with my profile loading up, or if it's a connection issue. They can actually see that user score, and then based off what the data they are seeing on their end, they can take an actionable item and see how they can improve that Citrix that user session.
Yeah, I can't get the thought on my head that this is like Dancing with the Stars, and our users are the dancers, and the judges are telling us real time, or at the end, or at some point, what we giving us some aspects of what they thought. I love that concept, both from a security and a performance perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the goal of it is just to really improve the end user experience, right? We developed the product to be is very like a very native and local like experience.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some things that can pop up that can cause some sort of user experience dips. So for us, it's just sort of like giving admins the ability to diagnose what that issue is, to make sure that they're not only it's an improvement on the end user experience, but if you're improving the end user experience, you're ensuring that user is productive.
Yeah.
No downtime, but with like connection drop offs or slow sessions.
Yeah, the fact that
is
end
this
users, sorry, Bill,
go ahead, Andy.
the fact that end users and numbers, right? Numbers don't lie. And I've had multiple situations where I've done assessments of a customer using one of our free micro assessments even. The IT staff said things are going great. And then you interview a customer with 2-minute logins and nobody really noticed that. This is a great example of a way you might call that out. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to ask: is this this is a cloud-only feature, or is this able to provide information relative to the on-premises version?
So it's going to be within Citrix Workspace. So it should.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it should be. I think it's still a little bit early as far as like I think how they're going to break it down, but it's part of the Citrix Workspace.
Okay.
So if you're an app and desktop customer, if your workloads are on-prem, as long as you're on Citrix Workspace, you have the ability to take advantage of this.
I see.
Yeah,
Great.
so to me that means you got the on-prem solutions, whether it's virtual desktop edition, which is the old VDI edition, all the way up to virtual app and desktop Premier, which used to be Zen Desktop Platinum. But then you have your services, right? So there's virtual desktop service all the way up to virtual app and desktop service, and then above that you get the workspace concept, which is virtual app and desktop service, plus the workspace, which brings in analytics like performance and security, right?
Correct.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, let's move to the next topic here. The next topic you guys have here is on-prem license server insights. We don't have to go into a ton of detail on this. We actually did a podcast on this that will hopefully be released if it's not already, where we talk about the on-prem license server insights, which get rolled up to a cloud service from Citrix. Anything specific you want to call out about this one?
Yeah, so we're just allowing the ability to an admin to go in the Citrix Cloud Console and see their license server usage insights within Citrix Cloud, their on-prem deployments. So, like it can help like with, managing uptime and reliability, like, so you can see if you're running out of licenses, you can stay on top of like how licenses are, if they're expiring or overages. So making sure that the deployment just kind of always up and running, and there's any sort of like disruptions within the business.
Hey, Bill, anything to add to that after doing the other podcast and now getting a chance to comment again?
Not really. I wonder do we want to roll back and let's talk about this the cloud connector enhancements they've made. A couple of.
I'm glad you brought that up. I skipped right past it. So in that case,
ordinarily I thought maybe I thought we might want to cover it, simply because I've had this question before about the updates to the cloud connectors being kind of at random, and it looks like the admins are now allowed to schedule them, at least a preferred schedule anyway. So Nitin, can you comment a little bit on that for us?
Well, hey, guys, before we go into that, let's just say this: the cloud connectors are the magical bridge between the service and the on-prem solutions, either hybrid or full, and those things are magical. And they replace the IMA servers, they replace the controllers for the sites, and do a lot of magical things, plus broker connections. So guys, if you don't know what a cloud connector is, that's the thing that brings your on-prem world to the cloud service. But Nitin, you want to go over the features that you guys have added here?
Yeah, so like as Bill was kind of mentioning, this is more of an in-demand feature that for customers that are on, virtual app and desktop service or workspace service, like the connectors themselves, while like they have the advantage of what you just described, a lot of times when we did updates to them, they were at random, and sometimes it may not be at a specific ideal time that an admin would want that connector to be updated. So now we've introduced a couple of things, like there's timestamps, so admins can actually get notified when a cloud connector is being updated and, when it's completed. And then also, as Bill was mentioning, they can do some sort of update scheduling. So they can set a preferred time or day for when they want their cloud connector updates and manage the resource locations and the cloud connectors all in one sort of same space.
So from an admin perspective, right, it's their job to have a cloud connector that is a domain member that lives in their environment. They're responsible for Windows updates. You really shouldn't put any other services on it, but Citrix is responsible for the Citrix updates, which sometimes require a reboot. And now you've got the ability to schedule that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Bill, anything else on that topic you want to cover?
No, nothing. I think that's a great feature and something that I know customers have been asking for. So I'm glad to see that in here.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, but it's actually pretty.
Yeah.
It's like people want to know that information and be able to obviously there's like the reasons why they'd want to schedule preferred time and date for those connectors in those various regions that they may have them.
Hey, Nitin, is there, you can't put it off forever there, right? I mean, at some point it's going to apply and you can't.
Yeah.
Correct. Any insight into how long that is? How long can you put it off for?
Oh, I'm actually not familiar with that one.
Okay.
Maybe Bill knows?
I don't think we've had a chance to play with it yet, so we don't know.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
That's right.
All right, so this next section is Okta IDP for Citrix Workspace Tech Preview. I am very curious about this one. This is something that I know was at Synergy. So when we talk Okta in a workspace world, the Okta is just the identity provider, or do I actually land on the Okta web page or Okta, the Okta Workspace page and then go into Citrix, or do I land on the Citrix Workspace page and leverage Okta identity for that?
That one it's in tech preview, so I haven't had a chance to really play around with this, but this is one of the most in-demand features that we got from when we rolled out Workspace. Okta IDP was just sort of like to be able to provide that those features that, for, being able to go into it securely within their web and SaaS apps, as well as their published on-prem applications, all within Citrix Workspace. So, I think the way it works is I think they'll be able to hit a Citrix page and it just does the sort of the handshake back in the background when I think they cycle through it. But yeah, really it's more, like identity management, and identity is probably one of the biggest things that we're looking at and implementing within the workspace to improve, login and security enhancements. But yeah, like I'm not too familiar with how that currently works as far as like how it looks for the end user. I don't know, Bill, if you may have played around with it yet on the tech preview side.
Not really, but I think the idea was that it would take you to they would enter the URL. It would take you to the Okta page where they sign in, then it essentially sends you back. I think that's the intent. At least that's what I'd seen in a couple of webinars, but it could have changed up between pre-tech preview and now.
Yeah, I have to assume that you would hit the Citrix Workspace and then it would be able to pull from Okta, either because you put a URL in or something's been inserted into the workspace and then brings you back to the workspace. Right. Because, the holy grail of this for every company, whether you're Microsoft, Citrix, you name it, is to have people on your workspace as much as possible and having you as the aggregate for everybody else. So I would be shocked if it took you to Okta and you stayed there. I almost
no.
Didn't brought that up.
Yeah, I think it's similar to like MFA from some of the other providers. You go to the workspace and it pops up a box and says enter your creds, and then you go back, even though in the background you're technically going to Okta for that part.
And I think for me, with my consulting background, and Bill, you can elaborate on this, that the idea that you can get that identity and then get all the way to your virtual app or desktop without having to re-authenticate, that would be key, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely key. That's what customers want, is that single login, and then from once they get back to their workspace, and ultimately once we move to the intelligent workspace, they can get to any of their SaaS or local apps or CVAD delivered apps and desktops without having to re-authenticate.
So Nitin, this might be the one we talked about before we started recording, that there would be topics on here that we'd say, hey, we got to double down and come back to that one. So maybe you can help us get an expert on to go through that one and walk through how that exactly works.
Yeah, definitely. I do have the actual person in mind too. I usually ping a lot of these type of identity management questions off of him as well. So yeah, but if folks are interested in the tech preview, we actually have, the blog that I put actually goes into like how they can actually set this up and take advantage of the tech preview that we released back in about September 10th, I think is when we came out with that.
So the next section here is always a fun one. It's about device information. And in order to get there, you have to understand that the on-prem solution for Citrix has really two options for licensing. One is concurrent based, which we've had forever. And the other is user/device based licensing. And Citrix is one of the only companies out there that actually gives you the ability to license users and devices in a pool. And then the algorithm will try to figure out the least amount of licenses based on the mix of users and devices that you can come up with. And so in this case, I think what we're talking about here, and Nitin, you'll be certainly should clear me up if we're not, but device information as part of the cloud service as you're pulling that information in. So it's not just users that are accessing your environment, but user and device, and even some detail on the user that is accessing the license and leveraging it.
Correct. Yeah. And so, previously, this page, so, customers that were using device listening or device listing there, the page could potentially show like an overuse scenario because device licensing enables, various users to connect to a single device and only consume a single license. But now, we're counting all users and unique devices. So both counts are representative. Admins get like pretty, they get good transparency across the Citrix service licensing, sort of environment. Basically assigned devices now include within that console, you can see historical trending. So admins can see like seasonal trends. There's also like a new tab that gives them information on devices and users launching against those devices. In the blog, there is actually like a screenshot of what this looks like. I know when I'm describing it, it can be very, it's actually visually, when you see it, it actually makes all sense. But it's basically to help admins to kind of get better visibility within their Citrix environment.
So I'm looking at the picture now, and I think that's a situation where it's a shared terminal or maybe a kiosk type scenario, or maybe shift work where 3 people come in and use the same computer, as themselves, but we want to recognize that the computer is being used by 3 different people, but going to pull a device license because that's the way Citrix has enabled the licensing to work. The image goes a long way. Hey, Bill, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I actually was on a call last week with a customer that was asking these very questions. How can they track device licensing? How can they track user licensing? They were all concerned about the user device construct in the Citrix cloud versus the on-prem concurrency. So we tried to explain it to them, but I hadn't actually read this in detail. So this would be nice, and I'll definitely make sure that we forward it to that customer because this will give them great insight into the licensing piece.
So Nitin, is this for the people using as a service or the on-prem or both?
So it's cloud for now. I think it will, but if they're using within cloud, I think it's just for our app and desktop service customers.
Okay. Well, and that's a great opportunity to kind of clarify this for people listening. The marketing guys call it cloud. They also call it service. And then when we technical guys start to talk about it, we talk about it as a service. So if you hear, like Nitin just did, he used cloud and service all within the same conversation. They mean the same things, right? So in this case, we're talking about people that use virtual app and desktop or virtual desktop or virtual app and desktop or Citrix Workspace as a service, aka cloud. This feature is enabled for you then. Yeah, sometimes I just have to say it out loud for myself just to make it all clear. All right, another topic here is new site health checks with Citrix Scout. So Nitin, it might make sense for you just to real briefly tell everybody what Scout is and then jump into what this new feature is.
Yeah, so this is just sort of kind of like a thing that we rolled out with 1909. Citrix Scout, sorry, enables IT admins to perform like proactive maintenance and diagnostics. It also gives them the ability to troubleshoot issues within like virtual apps and desktop deployments. So with the new site health checks and Citrix Scout, it's like a tongue twister there. Admins can now run health checks for Citrix Storefront and license servers in addition to their controllers and VDAs. So the goal of these, like, the health checks, they'll run a comprehensive list of tests for all major components of Citrix virtual apps and desktops. And actually have a little, it's like it sounds simple, but it's one of those things where it's one of those demands, one of the requests that we got when we were rolling out with the new on-prem release.
Well, I mean, knowledge is power, information is power, and the more you can know about your ecosystem around the controllers, the better.
Yeah, and the goal of this is also just, again, giving admins more tools, but also ensuring that they have the tools to improve that Citrix experience for the end users, throughout the organization.
Yeah, this has been around for a while, although it historically was a lot more manual than this. So I like this for admins, definitely.
Hey guys, is this something you can schedule? Are you scheduling these, or you're running them on demand?
I think you can schedule them, but now I have to follow up on that one with the product manager that runs this.
Okay, next topic is updates for customers running SCVMM, also known as Microsoft System Center Virtual Machine Manager, and that would be for the infrastructure platform, the host connections that you're connecting your controllers and maybe even your cloud connectors to. Nitin, you want to cover this one?
This is more of a minor kind of update, basically for customers that are running app and desktop environments on top of, and an SCVMM stands for System Center Virtual Machine Manager, which is why we have the SCVMM acronym. So with the release of PVS 1909, we're now announcing support for SCVMM 2019. So it ensures like a combined Citrix and Microsoft solution just works together, better together.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Citrix already integrates with, of course, XenServer, a XenServer resource pool, a vSphere site, Nutanix Acropolis cluster, as well as Azure, AWS, Google GCP, all of those guys. So, Citrix by far is the product out there that integrates with the most third-party platform systems, without a doubt. And that's one of the benefits of working in a Citrix environment. One of the reasons why we choose to be Citrix focused.
Mm-hmm. And Andy, just to kind of answer what we were talking about, one topic before, you can schedule with Citrix Scout, you can do schedules for a periodic diagnostic collection.
Okay, great, thanks. Was that you real time collaborating with the product manager?
Nah, yeah, I was just sort of like, I wanted to know that myself, so I pinged him, and I was double checking my work.
No, that's great. That's the power of what we have today, right? The ability to reach out real time and ask those questions. Maybe someday we'll be doing that within Citrix Workspace, and we won't even have to jump out to another app and do it.
That's the goal. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, this next topic is a personal favorite of mine. I have been a big fan of session recording for a decade now. And guys, if you don't know what session recording is, that's the ability to basically DVR, TiVo is what I used to call it. I don't know if anybody would even know what I meant if I said TiVo these days, but record the sessions for your users. I always talk about that either from a compliance perspective or from a support perspective, but it sounds like, even that's gotten some enhancements with this latest release.
Yeah, so session recording is a big thing for security purposes or audit purposes. So with 1909, the enhancements we're doing at session recording is now we're giving more control on who can see the recording, the actual recorded sessions. So we've added what's called like role-based access control. So you can grant or deny access to specific users for viewing recorded files. Admins can now actually grant viewing access to specific published applications or desktops or specific delivery groups. And in addition to that, we did a tech preview within session recording with this new like web-based session recording player. So just basically, it is what it sounds like. It's a web player that offers an improved admin experience when viewing like recorded files, and basically built in like a single unified console.
No, that's great. Hey, just real quick, one of you guys might have some beard or something rubbing on your mic, so just check that real quick.
Oh, that might have been me. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. That's part of doing it real and live and raw. Except for folks listening, it won't be live, but other than that. Okay, no, that's great. I've always been a big fan of session recording, and one of the complaints we always had was limiting people who could see the recordings for HR or legal reasons was very important. Hey, Bill, you're a very experienced Citrix admin. Session recording, where does that fit in your love of Citrix features?
I've always enjoyed this feature. I've had a few customers in the past that have taken advantage of it, but to your point, sometimes the lack of adoption was driven by the requirement that only admins or IT folks could view the recordings, and without giving everyone access to everything. So I think this will help with adoption and helping folks understand that HR can get their access to it as needed, or other folks through the role-based access. And I love the look of the web player. Can't wait to try that out.
You know, one common misperception of this product is how much data is it going to store? And of course, we're just putting a fork into the ICA, the screen scrape piece of the ICA protocol. I can't call it HDX. I have to call it ICA. But anyway, we're putting a fork in that. And so it really just depends on what's coming across, right? If the end user is doing a whole lot of visual changes, then that's what we're going to see. If it's just characters in an Excel spreadsheet, then that's what we're going to see changing. So the amount of data captured in session recording can be a lot less than you think, depending on what's actually being captured. That's a very common question.
That's correct. And
where I've seen this used a lot is for training, training users, as well as investigative reasons. But it's perhaps not the most exciting DVR recording, but in some cases it can be very beneficial to customers.
Yeah, and it's been pretty important for customers that are in the healthcare space or the financial services space.
Financial services, yeah.
All right, guys, this is awesome. I love having these conversations. Next topic is on-prem Citrix Gateway as an identity provider for Citrix Workspace. So obviously, this is a workspace conversation, and then it's going to take us into what you guys are trying to cover here. Nitin, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and then this kind of goes into that topic where it'd be great to have a future one of these where we get into the guy that some of my colleagues that are really familiar with identity management, because it's a really important topic, especially when it comes to the actual workspace and improving like login access and security. So when we introduced the Citrix Workspace last year, we were talking about how users can securely authenticate within their published apps or web apps, their actual workspace itself, using whatever the company's preferred identity provider was. So at the time, we were going to do it where we were going to do this sort of Citrix Gateway as that's going to be the one that takes advantage of identities, that identity management or identity providers that customers are using. So now for customers that have already invested with their on-prem gateway, they've already bought Citrix Gateway, they can leverage that now with the Citrix Workspace and deliver that and use that as a identity provider. So you can enable authentication with like Radius authentication, smart card authentication. It'll do like pass-through authentication integrated with Windows, and also set like conditional access policies. Again, this is more of a it'd be really great to have a designated topic on this one, because there's a lot of information that can, and I'm sure like people would want to know about this one.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's definitely a topic we can revisit. Definitely can. Hey, Bill, I had you muted just for a second trying to figure out what that noise was. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think Nitin, Andy and I have already talked about having a kind of an identity-focused podcasts like this in the future to kind of cover this. And there's a wealth of information here because, here you're talking about on-prem Citrix Gateway, but then again, you've got Okta and you've got Microsoft MFA and you've got Duo and a lot of other players in that space. And customers are often looking at all of the above and more. And it's kind of a gray black box type of thing for some people, myself included, and really figuring out, where's the final source of authentication, who's the service provider, who's the IDP, all of the things that go along with that. So I think it'd be a great topic for a future podcast, and we're planning on doing that.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of information on this one because I always ask so many questions with the guys that work within this like our identity management integration here. There's like a lot of information that they let me know. There's I almost have like a question a week when it comes to this.
So guys, the last topic that's in this blog is the Linux VDA updates. Nitin, you always say the best for last, so you got to really knock it out with this one.
So Linux is, we're getting a lot more interest in with Linux from our customers because they like the idea of choice. They could be running some custom applications that are, Unix based. So the goal of whenever we do these on-prem releases, we try to make sure that we're making our Linux VDA on par with our Windows VDA. So one of the biggest things that we're doing with the 1909 release is now customers can see, or admins can see, protocol information within Citrix Director. So they can see something like information such as EDT or TCP, which is within Citrix Director. We've also made some reauthentication enhancements that just sort of ensures that there's an issue, I think, where if a user was logging in and they authenticated, it didn't really ask them to re-authenticate. So that became like a request for customers saying we need to make sure that if a user needs to re-authenticate within a Linux session, that they're asked to re-authenticate. This is, good for scenarios when they're using like smart card or FAS or anonymous login or, single sign-on. So that's the thing about Linux is we're getting a lot more traction, a lot more our customers are looking at Linux deployments. And previously, customers may not necessarily or weren't looking at Linux as an option because it wasn't necessarily on par with our Windows VDA. But that has shifted now, or not shifted, but we're constantly making enhancements to the Linux for the Linux user base out there.
I have a question for you, Nitin. Are you seeing people use the Linux desktop as a landing page or a landing page, for lack of a better word, to get to maybe a browser base inside that desktop, and then using their SaaS-based apps from there? I see this SaaS world of growing and needing a browser that's centralized and managed, and maybe Linux as a platform for being the middleman in that.
Yeah, no. So that was exactly like how Linux was used within a virtual environment. Now for secure web access or secure web browsing, within Citrix Workspace, there's secure browser. So it gives you that sort of isolated web browser without having to build out any sort of backend infrastructure, stand up a server like a Linux VM. But customers, still leverage it the way that you just described. They'll stand up a Linux VM and sort of isolate it away from, the most of the rest of the environment, and that can run a lot of their published their web apps.
Hey, Bill, any thoughts on the Linux VDA?
I've got a project that just came across recently for this, so I'm on board with this, and glad to see again that Citrix is giving this some love, particularly the EDT, TCP details in Director and some of the other things. So it's all good. I'm very pleased to see this, and I think the customer that we're with will benefit from this, particularly if they go with the upcoming LTSR.
So guys, we're getting close to the bottom of the article here and about out of time as well. So it looks like, Nitin, one of the challenges here, or one of the asks here, is that people give some of these solutions, some of these features a kick, right, before you guys release them. And then it looks like you guys also had a webinar that was September 25th, but I'm sure that's either recordable or going to be rerun at some point, or recorded or rerun.
It's actually, on demand. So I think they, so if they were to sign up, they could watch the on-demand version of it.
Okay, great. All right. Well, Nitin, anything before we let you go that you'd want to talk about that we didn't bring up here?
So really just the key thing is we just released support for Windows Virtual Desktop. So I know that was released a couple weeks ago or a week ago. Sorry, I'm like my time's a little off. I just remembered it was like Monday today. But yeah, no, we released support for Windows Virtual Desktop. So Citrix is like basically one of the only ones where if you're a customer that's an existing Citrix customer, you can leverage or take advantage of Windows Virtual Desktop if for some specific reason. Like maybe you're running temporary desktops for a temporary workforce. And you can actually manage those and deploy those alongside your existing Citrix applications, but also have a lot of the management tools and security controls that Citrix brings and apply that to Windows Virtual Desktop. So that's actually probably the biggest new thing that we have. And just to reiterate what we were saying earlier, if you guys are for the long-term service release customers, they can try 1909 today and run in their pre-production environment, see how that's working, provide any feedback if there needs to be, so we make sure that 1912 LTSR release is optimal and meets all everybody's standards.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody out there has a pre-production environment that they're able to go and test and play in. That's kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke, but I'm sure a lot of people do, and they should, right? Everybody should. And one of the nice things about the architecture, the FMA architecture, or the service as a service architecture, is that has made it so much easier for Citrix admins to have a pre-production environment. So that, it is definitely something people should have or should be thinking about how they're going to have. Okay. Well, with that, Bill, anything before we let you go?
No, sir. I'm just glad Nitin was able to join us today. I think it was a great information.
So, Bill, if people want to find you, where would they find you?
They can find me at bsutton2009 on Twitter.
Yeah. Okay. Great. They could also find you by
of course, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And if they do a Citrix related project with XenTegra, they're definitely going to find you, right? You're going to spend a lot of time with them that way.
They are definitely going to find me. Yes, they are.
Nitin, any parting shots, and where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter. So it's my first last name. So Nitin, NITIN SHARMA _1 on Twitter, or they can find me on LinkedIn. Probably easier to type in Nitin Sharma and Citrix, and you'll probably be able to be the first one to pop up. And thank you guys for having me and allowing me to tell you guys a lot of the new updates that we're coming out with, and stay tuned for more updates as we kind of close out the year, and then especially when it comes to like the new workspace with intelligence.
No, that's great, Nitin. And we'll have you back on, and we'll do this again. And for people looking to find out more around myself and XenTegra, if you just go to XenTegra.com, or even better yet, XenTegra.com/events. We're running workshops and boot camps all the time. And for those of you not already going to Citrix Synergy next year, definitely reach out to us about trying to help you get that taken care of and booked and in large degree paid for. Using money Citrix makes available to partners like us. But with that, guys, I'll let you guys go, and thank you again for your time today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.